There's a moment in life when you realize that the person who's been with you through every joy, every heartbreak, every sleepless night, and every triumph is you. You've carried yourself through every chapter. The bright ones and the ones you prayed no one would read. But too often, we forget that we give love freely to others, but rarely to the ones staring back at us in the mirror. I want you to understand something deeply today. Loving yourself is not vanity, it's survival. It's not about ego, it's about energy, because the truth is, your life does depend on it. Every choice you make, every relationship you build, every dream you chase, all of it stems from how deeply you value yourself. So let's talk about what it really means to love yourself like your life depends on it. Because it does. There comes a moment in life when you realize that no one is coming to save you, not because people don't care, but because they can't live your life for you. They can love you, support you, walk beside you for a while. But ultimately, it's you who has to make that choice. To rise, to heal, to move forward, to choose yourself. And that right there is the first act of love. Choosing yourself doesn't mean closing off from the world or putting others beneath you. It means acknowledging your own worth, your own heartbeat, your own right to exist fully. It's about saying, I matter too. And for many of us, that's one of the hardest things to say out loud, because somewhere along the way, we were taught that love means sacrifice, that kindness means saying yes, that being good means putting everyone else first. But there's a difference between selflessness and self-abandonment. When you keep giving pieces of yourself away, trying to please everyone, you eventually run out of things to give. You wake up one day and realize you've been running on empty, doing everything right, yet feeling completely disconnected inside. Choosing yourself is about filling that space again, not with ego, but with truth. It's about understanding that when your cup is full, you can pour into others without losing yourself in the process. I remember meeting someone years ago who told me that they'd spent half their life trying to be who everyone else wanted them to be. They chased approval, tried to fit in, and dimmed their light so others could shine. And when I asked them what they truly wanted, they couldn't answer. It broke my heart. Because that's what happens when you live by other people's expectations. You lose your own reflection. Choosing yourself means reclaiming that reflection. It's standing in front of the mirror and saying, I'm done living small. It's not arrogance, it's awakening, because when you start choosing yourself, something incredible happens. The world begins to realign around you. The people who truly love you don't fall away, they step closer. The ones who were only there because you made yourself convenient begin to fade. And though that hurts at first, it's one of the purest forms of liberation you'll ever know. It's like oxygen. When you're on a plane and they tell you to put your mask on before helping others, they're not teaching selfishness, they're teaching survival. You can't help anyone if you can't breathe. The same applies to life. You can't love deeply, dream boldly, or give freely if you're gasping for air inside your own life. The act of choosing yourself starts small. It begins with a single boundary. A single no that feels uncomfortable at first but liberating later. It starts when you cancel plans because your body needs rest. It begins when you walk away from something that no longer feels right, even when your heart still cares. It's in every moment you say, I deserve peace, and actually mean it. There's a quiet kind of power in those moments, the kind that doesn't shout or demand attention but transforms everything. You begin to attract differently. You stop chasing what drains you. You stop tolerating half love and half effort. Because now, you know your value. You no longer settle for being someone's option when you know you're meant to be your own priority. And let's be honest, it's not easy. Choosing yourself can feel like betrayal to the version of you that always wanted to make everyone happy. It can feel selfish to say no, to walk away, to put yourself first, but I promise it's not selfish, it's sacred. You're not betraying others, you're finally being loyal to yourself. When you start to honor that, your world changes, your energy shifts. You begin to notice how much lighter life feels when you stop forcing yourself to be everywhere you're not meant to be. You realize that love, real love, doesn't demand that you shrink. It meets you at your fullest height. It's funny how we sometimes wait for permission to love ourselves, as if we need validation to start living fully. But you don't need anyone to tell you that you're worthy. You just are. You were born enough. You don't have to earn your own love. You only have to remember it. Think of a time when you finally made a decision for yourself, one that scared you but also felt right. Maybe it was ending a relationship that no longer served you. Maybe it was quitting a job that drained your spirit. Maybe it was choosing your mental health over someone's approval. In that moment, you weren't just making a decision, you were reclaiming your power. That's what self-love looks like in motion. It's messy, it's brave, it's uncomfortable, but it's real. And that choice, that one act of choosing yourself, ripples through everything else. You start showing up differently. You speak more truthfully. You give more authentically. You stop needing to prove your worth because you already know it. And when you operate from that space, you don't just change your life, you change your frequency. There's an energy that comes from people who have chosen themselves. You can see it in their eyes. There's calm, there's depth, there's presence. They don't rush, they don't beg, they don't chase. They move through life knowing that what's meant for them will meet them in peace, not chaos. That's what happens when you choose yourself. You stop fighting for belonging and start living in alignment. And here's the thing. When you love yourself enough to choose yourself, you give others permission to do the same. You become an example of what wholeness looks like. You show your children, your friends, your family that self-love isn't about isolation. It's about foundation. So maybe today, it's time to make that choice, to put your hand on your heart and say, I am enough, just as I am, to stop waiting for the world to validate you and start validating yourself. Because when you finally choose yourself, really deeply, unapologetically, you don't lose anything that's meant for you. You only lose what was built on the illusion that you weren't enough. Choosing yourself is the first act of love. It's where healing begins, where freedom starts, and where every beautiful thing in your life takes root. And once you do, you'll never go back to who you were, because you'll finally understand what it means to truly be home within yourself. We all carry things we wish we didn't. Memories that echo in quiet rooms, words we wish we could take back, moments that replay in our minds when everything else goes still. It's strange how the past can linger like a shadow, even when years have passed, even when we've changed. We tell ourselves we've moved on, but somewhere deep down, a part of us still whispers, you should have known better. Forgiving yourself is one of the hardest things you'll ever do, because it's not just about saying it's okay. It's about untangling the guilt that's been woven into your identity. It's about facing the version of yourself who made mistakes and saying, I see you, I understand you, and I still choose to love you. That's not easy. It takes courage to face the mirror without flinching. We grow up learning how to apologize to others, but no one teaches us how to apologize to ourselves. No one tells us how to release the heaviness that comes from our own self-judgment. But here's the truth. You can't live fully if you keep punishing yourself for being human. You can't move forward while dragging the weight of every mistake behind you. Life isn't designed for endless penance, it's designed for growth. Think about it. Every scar on your body is proof that you healed. So why do we treat emotional wounds differently? Why do we reopen them with blame instead of letting them become part of our strength? The things you regret are not there to define you. They're there to refine you. Every wrong turn, every broken promise, every bad decision was a moment of learning, a fragment of your becoming. There's a story about a man who carried a heavy rock everywhere he went. He believed it reminded him of what he'd done wrong, a symbol of accountability, he said. But as years passed, the rock grew heavier, not because it changed, but because he did. He grew older, weaker, tired of the burden. One day, someone asked him, if you've already learned the lesson, why are you still carrying the stone? He didn't have an answer. Maybe that's what many of us are doing, holding on to guilt long after it's taught us what we needed to know. Forgiveness isn't about erasing what happened. It's about making peace with it. You can't rewrite your past, but you can choose how you carry it. You can decide that your story doesn't have to be a prison. It can be a path. Every person you've been, even the one who stumbled, deserves compassion, because that version of you didn't know what you know now. They acted with the tools they had, with the understanding they carried at that time. And when you know better, you do better. That's how life works. I once met someone who said they couldn't forgive themselves for hurting a person they loved. They apologized 1,000 times, but they still felt haunted. I asked them, if that person had forgiven you, would you let it go? They said yes. Then why, I asked, do you need someone else's forgiveness to free yourself? They looked at me quietly for a while, and then I saw it. The realization that the prison wasn't built by what they did, but by what they kept replaying. The mind has a way of turning pain into identity. We convince ourselves that guilt is the price we pay for redemption, but guilt doesn't purify you. It paralyzes you. It keeps you trapped in moments that no longer exist. What heals you is understanding, compassion, acceptance. Neuroscientists have studied the power of self-forgiveness, and the findings are fascinating. When you forgive yourself, your brain releases oxytocin, the same chemical linked to trust and bonding. You literally start rebuilding your connection to yourself. Forgiveness is not weakness, it's rewiring. It's your brain learning to choose peace over punishment. But here's the thing. Forgiveness isn't a one-time act. It's a process. Some days you'll feel free, and others you'll hear that old voice again whispering, you should have done better. And that's okay. You just keep reminding yourself, I'm not that person anymore. I've learned. I'm still learning. Let's be honest. We all mess up. We lose our tempers. We love the wrong people. We stay too long. We walk away too soon. We say things we can't unsay. And yet beneath all of that, there's still a heart that's trying, a soul that's searching, a person who wants to do better. That effort, that quiet, consistent trying, that's what matters. Sometimes forgiveness looks like taking a deep breath and giving yourself permission to stop reliving the moment. It looks like deleting the message you wrote in anger, writing a letter you'll never send, standing under a shower and letting it wash away not just the day but the years of regret you've carried. It's small, gentle acts that say, I deserve peace too. There's a kind of beauty in brokenness, because cracks let the light in. The Japanese art of kintsugi repairs broken pottery with gold, making it even more valuable than before. The flaws become part of its beauty. You're the same. Every mistake you've made is a line of gold. Proof that you've lived, that you've been brave enough to break and rebuild. The world doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be real. It needs you to forgive yourself so you can move forward with empathy for yourself and for others, because when you forgive yourself, you stop judging people for their mistakes. You start seeing them as reflections of your own humanity. That's how compassion grows, through understanding, not through punishment. Maybe you've been holding on to something for a long time. Maybe there's a version of you that you still resent. But what if, instead of trying to erase that person, you embrace them? What if you said, thank you for getting me here, because they did? That person who stumbled, who hurt, who failed, they're the reason you know what strength feels like now. They're the reason you know how to love deeper, live wiser, and stand taller. So let yourself off the hook. You've carried that burden long enough. You've punished yourself enough. It's time to set yourself free. You can't rewrite yesterday, but you can choose what tomorrow feels like. And it starts the moment you whisper to yourself, I forgive you, not because you've forgotten, but because you finally understand that being human was never about being flawless. It was about being willing to keep going even after you've fallen. And maybe, just maybe, that's what makes us most beautiful. The courage to begin again with a softer heart and a lighter soul. There comes a time when you realize that not everyone who has access to you deserves to, that not every conversation, every connection, or every demand on your time is sacred. Life teaches you, often through exhaustion, that peace doesn't come from saying yes to everything. It comes from learning when to say no. Setting boundaries isn't about building walls, it's about building balance. It's about knowing that your energy, your time, your emotional well-being, these are not limitless resources, they are precious, and protecting them is one of the most powerful acts of love you can give yourself. Most of us grew up believing that being kind meant being available, that love meant always showing up, always giving, always saying yes, even when it hurt. We confuse pleasing others with compassion. But there's a difference. Compassion extends from love. People-pleasing grows from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, fear of not being enough. And that fear keeps you trapped in cycles of exhaustion, resentment, and quiet sadness. You start saying yes to things that drain you. You stay in conversations that break your spirit. You let people cross lines because you're afraid that speaking up will make you look selfish or difficult. But every time you silence yourself to keep the peace, you create a storm within. Every time you ignore your limits to make others comfortable, you teach yourself that your needs don't matter. And that's how you slowly lose your own voice in the noise of everyone else's expectations. There's a moment when that realization hits, when you wake up and feel the weight of all the times you said yes, when your heart was screaming no. You feel the fatigue, not just physical but emotional, that deep kind of tired that doesn't go away with sleep. That's your soul trying to tell you, enough. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't give from a place of depletion. Your peace is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Setting boundaries isn't a rejection of others, it's an acceptance of yourself. It's standing in your truth and saying, this is what I can give and this is what I cannot. It's not cruel, it's clarity. And the people who truly love and respect you will understand that. They might not always like it, but they will recognize it as strength, not distance. I remember meeting someone who was always available to everyone. They were the person everyone called at 2 a.m., the one who took on everyone else's problems, who never said no because they didn't want to disappoint anyone. And one day they broke down, not because someone hurt them, but because they had given so much of themselves away that there was nothing left to hold on to. They realized that being everything for everyone had cost them their own sense of self. That story is more common than you think. We live in a time when being always on is glorified, when productivity is mistaken for purpose and busyness for value, but peace doesn't come from being constantly available. It comes from knowing your boundaries and respecting them. A recent study by the American Psychological Association showed that people who maintain healthy personal boundaries report lower stress, stronger self-esteem, and deeper, more authentic relationships. Why? Because they operate from wholeness, not obligation. They give because they want to, not because they're afraid of what will happen if they don't. It's easy to forget that you teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. If you constantly allow others to overstep, they'll start believing it's okay. But when you stand firm in your limits, you send a silent message. I value myself. I respect my time. I honor my peace. And that kind of quiet confidence changes everything. Setting boundaries can be uncomfortable, especially if you've spent years avoiding confrontation or seeking approval. You might feel guilty at first. You might even lose a few people along the way. But the ones who leave when you start valuing yourself were never meant to stay. They were attached to your compliance, not your authenticity. And once you let go of those connections, you make space for relationships built on mutual respect, not dependency. Boundaries aren't just about saying no to others. They're also about saying no to the old versions of yourself that tolerated too much. The version that accepted disrespect because you thought that's what love looked like. The version that stayed quiet to keep the peace. The version that kept giving chances to people who proved they didn't deserve them. Setting boundaries is a declaration. I am no longer available for what hurts me. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones with ourselves. The late night scrolling that steals our rest. The overthinking that keeps us hostage to the past. The habit of reliving pain just because it's familiar. Boundaries with others mean little if you don't learn to create them within. You deserve to rest. You deserve to log off. You deserve to stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand. There's beauty in learning to protect your energy. It's not about isolation. It's about alignment. You begin to see how much lighter life feels when you stop saying yes to things that don't align with your peace. You begin to attract people who respect your limits. Because they see how deeply you respect yourself, you start living from a place of calm rather than chaos. And that shift, that quiet transformation, changes not just your relationships but your entire world. Think about a time when you set a boundary and felt a mix of fear and relief. Fear because you worried what others would think, relief because deep down you knew it was right. That moment matters. That's the moment you chose. Yourself. And every time you do, you reinforce your worth. You're teaching yourself that your peace is worth protecting, even if it means disappointing others. The truth is, not everyone will understand your boundaries, and that's okay. You're not here to make sense to everyone. You're here to live in alignment with your values, to protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. Your energy is your currency. Spend it wisely. Don't waste it on constant explanations or endless arguments. You owe no apology for choosing calm over chaos. When you start setting boundaries, something beautiful happens. You stop reacting to everything. You stop chasing validation. You begin responding from a place of strength rather than fear. You become grounded. You start existing in the present instead of being pulled apart by everyone else's expectations. You start realizing that peace isn't something you find. It's something you create every day through the choices you make and the limits you honor. So protect your energy, protect your heart, protect your peace. Because when you do, you don't just survive, you begin to truly live. Boundaries aren't barriers to love, they are bridges to respect. They are the invisible lines that remind you and the world that you are not just here to be consumed, you are here to be cherished. And that kind of self-respect, that kind of peace is worth everything. There's a voice inside you that never stops talking. It follows you everywhere, in the quiet of the night, in the noise of the day, in those moments when no one else is around. It's the voice that narrates your life, the one that tells you who you are, what you can do, and what you can't. But here's the thing, most of us spend our lives listening to that voice without ever realizing how cruel it can be. We speak to ourselves in ways we would never speak to someone we love. We criticize, we doubt, we shame, we compare, and we call it normal. But it's not, it's self-sabotage disguised as honesty. If you really think about it, the relationship you have with yourself is the longest and most intimate relationship you'll ever have. You've lived every second with your own thoughts. You've seen yourself in every version, the brave one, the broken one, the lost one, the hopeful one. You've survived every failure and every heartbreak. You've carried yourself through storms that no one else even knew you were facing. And yet, instead of showing gratitude to that person, we often tear them down, we call them names, we tell them they're not enough. We hold them hostage to their worst moments. Imagine talking to a child the way you talk to yourself. Imagine looking into their eyes and saying, "You're not good enough," or "You'll never make it," or "You always mess things up." It hurts to even imagine that, doesn't it? Because deep down you know it's wrong. You know that child deserves compassion, patience, and love. And yet, that child still lives within you. That same softness, that same need for kindness still exists in your heart. Somewhere along the way, the world convinced you that being hard on yourself would make you stronger. But the truth is, it doesn't make you strong. It makes you weary. What makes you strong is love, the kind of love that forgives, that encourages, that believes even when things fall apart. There's real power in changing the way you talk to yourself. Words carry energy. They create your reality. If you tell yourself you're worthless long enough, you'll start to live like it. But if you remind yourself you're worthy, capable, and growing, you'll start to rise to that belief. Science backs this up. Studies have shown that self-compassion literally changes the brain. It reduces stress, strengthens resilience, and boosts motivation. When you treat yourself with kindness, your mind responds by opening, not shutting down. You begin to think more clearly, act more confidently, and heal more deeply. I once met someone who said they couldn't stand the sound of their own thoughts. Every time they failed, their inner voice turned into an enemy. Cruel, sharp, unforgiving. They called themselves names no one else ever would. When I asked why, they said, "If I don't push myself, I'll never get better." But there's a difference between discipline and destruction. You don't have to destroy yourself to grow. Growth happens when you nurture what's already within you, not when you shame it into submission. It's okay to hold yourself accountable. It's okay to push for better, but you can do that with love. You can say, "I made a mistake, but I can learn," instead of, "I'm such a failure." You can say, "I didn't handle that well," instead of, "I ruin everything." The words you choose matter because they become the lens through which you see your life. When your self-talk becomes gentle, the world around you starts to feel gentler too. Think about how you speak to someone you love when they're hurting. You don't tear them down, you hold them up. You remind them of who they are, not what they did wrong. You see their potential, not just their pain. That's what love does. It heals, it uplifts, it gives space for growth. Why not offer that same grace to yourself? Why not become your own safe place instead of your own battlefield? There's a quote that says, "You've been criticizing yourself for years and it hasn't worked. Try approving of yourself and see what happens." And it's true. You can't hate yourself into becoming the person you want to be. You can only love yourself there. Every time you speak kindly to yourself, You're reprogramming your mind to believe in peace over punishment. You're creating an inner home where you can rest instead of hide. Self-love isn't just about affirmations or positive quotes on a mirror. It's about shifting your entire relationship with yourself. It's waking up and saying, "I'm proud of you for trying." It's looking in the mirror and seeing a survivor, not a failure. It's catching that inner critic mid-sentence and choosing to respond with compassion. It's small moments of grace that build a foundation of strength. There will be days when it's harder to do that, when the noise in your head gets louder than the love in your heart, when you fall back into old patterns and speak harshly to yourself again. That's okay, you're human. This is not about perfection. It's about awareness. When you notice the cruelty, you can interrupt it. You can pause, take a breath, and say, "No, I won't talk to myself like that anymore." That's how change begins. One gentle correction at a time. You deserve to be on your own side. You deserve to be your own comfort when life gets heavy. You deserve to speak words that remind you of your strength, not your shortcomings. Think of your inner voice as a companion on this journey. You can make it your enemy, or you can make it your ally. The choice is yours. And when you start treating yourself like someone you love, you'll notice something beautiful. You'll start radiating that same energy outward. You'll be softer with others, because you'll understand what real compassion feels like. You'll stop expecting perfection from people because you've stopped demanding it from yourself. You'll move through life not needing to prove your worth because you already know it's there. That's the quiet power of speaking to yourself with love. It changes everything. The way you walk, the way you breathe, the way you see yourself in the world. It's not arrogance, it's peace. It's finally realizing that you can be both a work in progress and a masterpiece at the same time. So the next time you catch yourself being harsh, pause. Imagine someone you love standing in front of you, feeling exactly how you feel right now. What would you say to them? Say that to yourself because you deserve to hear it. You always have. You are not your mistakes. You are not your worst moments. You are the one who survived them, and the way you speak to yourself is the bridge between who you've been and who you're becoming. Speak with love. Speak with patience. Speak with grace. Because your soul is always listening. There's a rhythm to life that most of us forget to listen to. We wake up, rush through the motions, get lost in noise, and fall asleep wondering where the day went. We tell ourselves we're living, but sometimes we're just existing, running on autopilot, disconnected from our own spirit. And it's not because we don't care, but because we've forgotten how to pause. We've forgotten that every day is a chance to come home to ourselves. Creating daily rituals that honor your worth isn't about luxury or perfection. It's about remembering that your time, your energy, and your presence are sacred. It's about reclaiming the small moments that make you feel alive. You see, we often think that big changes create fulfillment, the new job, the dream relationship, the breakthrough. But it's the quiet consistency of how you treat yourself every day that truly shapes your life. It's the morning you wake up and decide to breathe deeply before checking your phone. It's choosing to step outside for sunlight instead of scrolling through someone else's life. It's sitting with a cup of tea in your own thoughts, instead of filling every silence with distraction. These aren't small things. They're acts of remembrance, reminders that you matter. There's something sacred about having rituals that center you. They're like anchors in a world that's constantly pulling you in different directions. When life gets chaotic, and it will, your rituals bring you back to calm, to focus, to presence. They whisper, "You're still here. You're still okay." That's what honoring your worth feels like. Not grand gestures, but small, steady acts of devotion to your own peace. Think of your morning. How do you start your day? Do you rush through it, already anxious before it begins? Or do you take a moment to ground yourself, to remind your mind and body that you deserve a peaceful beginning? The first thing you do when you wake up sets the tone for everything that follows. Imagine starting each day not with urgency but with intention. Stretching your body, taking a breath, whispering a word of gratitude, even for just being here. That's not self-indulgence, that's alignment. One of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is time that belongs only to you. Time where you are not performing, not producing, not pleasing, just being. Light a candle, write a few words, read something that feeds your soul, take a walk without your phone, watch the sky change colors. These things may seem simple, but they are powerful because they root you in presence. They remind you that you are not defined by how much you accomplish, but by how deeply you connect with yourself, with the moment, with life. We often wait for special occasions to celebrate ourselves, birthdays, achievements, milestones, but life happens in the ordinary days. You don't need a reason to honor yourself. You are the reason. You deserve care not because you've done something to earn it, but because you exist. When you build rituals that affirm your worth, you stop seeking validation from outside. You stop waiting for others to make you feel seen because you've already seen yourself. There's a story I once heard about a woman who every morning would sit by her window and write one thing she loved about herself. Sometimes it was deep, like her resilience. Sometimes it was simple, like her laugh. Over time, she said her life began to feel softer. She didn't change her job or her circumstances. She just started treating herself with the same tenderness she used to reserve for everyone else. That's the quiet power of ritual. It doesn't shout, it transforms silently. Science even supports this. Studies show that consistent routines of self-care reduce anxiety and strengthen emotional resilience. Your brain thrives on rhythm and repetition. When you do something nurturing regularly, your nervous system learns safety. Your mind begins to associate your daily actions with comfort, and that becomes your inner stability. It's like giving your soul a home inside your own body. Some people think rituals are rigid, but they're not. They're fluid. They evolve with you. Some days your ritual might be journaling, other days it might just be silence. What matters is the intention behind it. It's not about doing it perfectly. It's about showing up for yourself again and again, especially on the days when you don't feel like it, because that's when it matters most. It's easy to forget your worth when you're surrounded by noise, deadlines, opinions, endless comparisons. But when you build rituals that remind you of who you are, you create space to breathe between all that noise. You begin to hear your own voice again, the one that's calm, kind, certain, the one that says you're doing your best even when the world tells you it's not enough. Your rituals don't have to be elaborate. Sometimes it's just lighting incense before bed or saying thank you before a meal. Sometimes it's watching the rain and allowing yourself to slow down without guilt. Sometimes it's talking kindly to your reflection instead of criticizing it. Every act of self-respect, no matter how small, builds the foundation of your worth. You start realizing that peace isn't something you find. It's something you create piece by piece through intention. That's what rituals do. They make your life feel sacred again. They turn the mundane into meaningful. They remind you that even on the hardest days, you have the power to create beauty in your own rhythm. There's this quiet shift that happens when you honor yourself daily. You stop chasing validation. You stop running from loneliness. You stop trying to prove anything. You begin to stand taller, speak softer, move with purpose. You start to radiate something that people can feel, an inner steadiness that doesn't depend on external approval. And that kind of peace can't be faked. It's built, moment by moment, through the rituals that connect you back to your soul. Maybe your life won't always feel like a grand adventure. Maybe it won't always be loud or dramatic, but it can be full of meaning, of quiet beauty, of moments that belong entirely to you. You can live a life that feels like home, no matter where you are. All it takes is the decision to start showing up for yourself, not once in a while, but every single day. So create rituals that remind you that you matter, that your energy is sacred, that you deserve rest, laughter, and peace. Let every small act of care be a promise to yourself. I am worth this time. I am worth this love. And the more you live by that truth, the more the world around you will begin to mirror it back. Because when you honor yourself daily, life starts to honor you in return. When you love yourself like your life depends on it, you stop surviving, you start living. You become whole, you become grounded, you become the kind of person whose presence brings light, not because they have it all together, but because they finally realize that the light was within them all along. So tonight, when you look in the mirror, don't just see a face, see the one person who's been fighting for you since the beginning, and whisper to that person, I love you, I'm proud of you, I've got you, because that's where true strength begins.